Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls, and you're listening to Rainbow Country.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, Lauren Marie Fleming, a writer and writing coach, who's been featured on Good Morning America, Glamour, and Cosmo, joins me to talk about her debut rom-com queer novel, Because Fat Girl. That and more on episode 426, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello, and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto, and now proudly in syndication across Canada from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together, we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, as well as being recognized as a #1 Canadian LGBT podcast. So today, she's been featured on Good Morning America, Glamour, Cosmo. She's a writer, she's a writing coach, and she's here today to talk about her debut rom-com novel, Because Fat Girl. Lauren Marie Fleming is my guest and joins me to talk about her debut queer novel, her writing school, School for Writers, and more. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house. And on this episode, I'm featuring some British New Wave, some Canadian New Wave, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 426 through Rainbow Country. And our first stop, the Rainbow Country Bookstore. Today, author Lori Green reads from her book, Drag Queens and Beauty Queens, Contesting Femininity in the World's Playground. By the way, on Amazon.ca, Drag Queens and Beauty Queens has a rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars.
New York Avenue, where the party began. Mortimer breathes deeply and gestures broadly with his arms at the now vacant lots and rundown buildings on the west side of New York Avenue. The Saratoga was here, he points behind us. And the Shea Perry Disco. He turns and walks toward the world-famous boardwalk and makes a right on Westminster, commonly known as Snake Alley, a winding back street that connected New York, Kentucky, and Mount Vernon avenues in the old neighborhood. The parking lot to the right used to be the Entertainments Club, the oldest bar on the East Coast. Louise Mack, who loved gay people, owned the building, and the bottom floor was her little speakeasy nightclub, which always catered to gay men. It was one of those places where you had to knock on the door and have a code word to get in. Mortimer continues to walk, looking around, gesturing toward 2 large parking lots on the opposite side of the street, where the Grand Central Hotel and Studios 5 and 6 once stood before they burned down. He laughs as he kicks an abandoned beer bottle toward the curb. Gay rooming houses and hotels once choked the streets here, and it was all gay everywhere. He turns and frowns as he rounds another corner of the ghosts of properties where it was easy to pick up young men for sex and rent boys, especially in the 1980s. We turn onto Kentucky Avenue, where Snake Alley ends, now a devastated parking lot, as he describes the hotels and gay businesses that used to line the west side of the street. On the corner of Pacific and Kentucky Avenues, on the right-hand side was the coffee mill. On the left-hand side, the Atlantic City Electric Company. Across the street was Kelsey's Restaurant, and what used to be a pool hall and pizza parlor, rooming houses, a little gay grocery store. He pauses and points across the street to a small house, which still has a plant in the window. This is where drag queen Sandy Beach lived. Mortimer points to a little window where he remembers losing his virginity. He shakes his head, surveying the empty space. Turning right on Pacific Avenue, we walk past an empty lot, which was once Lyle's, a gay breakfast place where everybody ended up after staying out all night partying. Two prostitutes walk by, followed by their pimp arguing about cigarettes. Turning right, back down New York Avenue, he summons the ghosts of gay clubs once again, the Saratoga, the Shea, the Rendezvous, where he used to perform in drag, and where he saw his first gay sex inside the club, right on the dance floor. On the right side stood the Chester Inn, its restaurant called the Front Porch, and there was an underground club here called Pucalani with a pool. Across the street was an Italian restaurant, Mama Mott's, where he had his first gay date. It's all gone now. Camp and the queering of Miss America. The corner of New York Avenue and the boardwalk in Atlantic City Beach side is the girls' side of the street, the spot where lesbians congregate to watch the parade and cheer as the cars go by carrying the Miss America pageant contestants. On the opposite side of the boardwalk, gay men stand in front of Ripley's Believe It or Not museum waiting for the parade to begin. This year, there is an added intrigue, since this is the first time an openly lesbian contestant, Miss Missouri Earner Flattery, is competing for the crown as America's ideal woman. Many spectators carry rainbow flags. Some are dressed in drag, men in full makeup, women donning T-shirts with men's chests and muscular arms painted on them. Others wear rainbow kitsch, plastic sunglasses, boas, crystal-studded crowns. Both men and women flirt with local police as they beg to stand pressed up against the parade route and promise they will behave in return. Drag queen Morgan Wells stands in a gown and a headpiece on the men's side. Beside her stands a man shirtless with pierced nipples attached to chains. Gay men congregate, sorted by age and acquaintance, under the marquee of the museum. To their right quietly sits a family with beach chairs and 3 small tow-headed children on their laps. Shoebies, or out-of-towners as we call them, they gawk at the spectacle before them. The convertible carrying the Miss America contestants in the Show Us Your Shoes parade pass in alphabetical order. They wear costumes whimsically representing their states, with shoes held up in the air with one leg as they lean back in their seats and wave to the crowds. Show us your shoes is screamed from New York Avenue crowds as each contestant passes. And as they do, most of them met with cheers of encouragement, waving rainbow flags, while others receive sometimes not so flattering critiques of their tepid presentations. You on New York Avenue now, honey. You ain't in Kansas anymore, someone yells in the crowd. A baton twirling team from Kentucky approaches. The young girls dressed in rainbow-colored leotards draw near, and the excitement among onlookers builds. They all respond by waving their rainbow flags and chanting, "Twirl, girl, twirl. Twirl, girl, twirl," as they jump up and down and continue to wave their flags. The twirlers, a little disconcerted, perform their number. Flags begin waving and people push in toward the yellow cones along the parade route. Miss Missouri Earner Flaherty is dressed in a blue and white baseball uniform and holding up a pair of bejeweled high-top sneakers. As the convertible nears, the cheers increase. She smiles, but she is demure as she waves. Jean runs toward the car waving her rainbow flag. And though Erin smiles and waves back, she appears a bit awkward with this group of locals, looking for some acknowledgement of their shared identity. The crowd chants, "Show us your shoes." Show us your shoes, not your midriffs. Mimi on first stands at the top of the risers as she enters wearing a 12-foot-long purple bejeweled velvet octopus stole with arms wrapped around her torso and dragging down the steps behind her. Hair high in a platinum blonde bouffant, her lips bright red, Mimi cocks her head, turns and drops the stole coyly, revealing a sparkling black velvet swimsuit and a gold and purple shell accessories. She struts, turns her back to the audience and winks. A finger goes to her lips as if to say, "Oh my, I'm so exposed." She seems oblivious to her fatness. In fact, she shows a confidence in her superior form, her extra large body jiggling, hands on her hips accentuating her simple frame. Mimi walks down the runway, stopping at the end. She licks her lips slowly, turns, and walks back to center stage, moving her hips slowly to the music. "Mimi on first. Contestant number 1 is announced, along with her measurements, 72, 48, 72. The crowd cheers and applauds, and she bends over slowly, paws and bottom to the audience to retrieve her stole. As Mimi is escorted away by Speedo-clad male dancers, the next contestant begins to descend. Farrah Mascara steps gracefully, one stilettoed foot after the other in a sequined red robe. As she reaches the stage, her robe falls away, revealing a red cutout sequin swimsuit, fishnet stockings, and a giant lobster-clawed hands as gloves. She moves her thumbs, pinching the air, flashing an open-mouthed, toothy smile. She shakes her head side to side, her huge hair just seconds behind her. Farrah struts from one side to the other as she makes her way down the runway, ending in a figure 8, pinching claws held high. She shimmies and jiggles her large body, putting one claw to her mouth in feigned embarrassment. Miss Farrah Mascara, contestant number 2. Her favorite food is chicken nuggets. Her favorite color is the rainbow. Farrah squeals and grabs the arm of one of her escorts as the next contestant appears at the top of the risers in a gold lame robe cinched around her waist. Tina Burner descends in sparkly white platform shoes and reveals her swimsuit, white and skirted, with a gold belt and an anchor and gold tasseled epaulets on her shoulders. Tina's ginger hair is coiffed 1950 style, and she holds a captain's nautical cap. Posing, one knee bent, arms by her side, wrist flexed, head cocked to one side, she walks slowly to the top of the runway and puts one white-gloved hand to her mouth as she knocks her knees together and giggles. Tina Burner, contestant number 3. Her favorite perfume is fishy.
Up next, because Fat Girl.
Hi, this is Michael Anthony Alago, music executive, photographer, author, and you are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Janelle Zenon and I met as incoming freshmen at UCLA Film School, the two queer kids in a sea of geeky white dudes who all thought they were going to be the next Tarantino. It was Janelle who got me the job at Roussard's when I was struggling to make rent and pay for my senior thesis film. They were hiring extra help for the holidays, and she dragged me to the job interview, promising it would be an easy way to pay the bills. She was right. It was easy money. A little too easy. Instead of pursuing the shitty-paying director's assistant roles my fellow graduates had taken, I worked my way up the Roussard's ladder, enticed by the high-paying commissions I made from selling clothes I couldn't fit in or afford. It was fine in the beginning, when I had time and energy to work at Roussard's and hustle for film gigs on the side. But then my brother died, and took my ambition with him. These days, the closest I got to making movies was watching Emmy dress the stars of them. Janelle hadn't let Roussard's consume her like I had. A talented cinematographer, she was the best director of photography to come out of our program. Yet she always seemed to lose the big jobs to people with, quote, more experience, and a style closer to what the director was seeking, aka straight, white, and male. Those same more experienced cinematographers, however, would have to hire Janelle to come in and consult on scenes involving black actors, which they had little to no practice in lighting. That sums up white privilege right there. The world is lit up for your skin tone.
Lauren Marie Fleming, hi, how are you?
Hi, I am doing fabulous. How are you doing today?
I am well. Thank you for being here to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for this, especially to talk about your debut novel titled Because Fat Girl. That's the title, Because Fat Girl. And I want to start there. The title. There has to be a story behind choosing this particular title. I'm sure there is. And if there is, please share it.
There is for sure. So I've been part of the body positive community for a really long time, especially the queer body positive community. And we use the phrase because fat girl in multiple different scenarios. The first being that I think is the most powerful is we use it in kind of an activist way, in a reclamation of the term fat and of the way like, okay, yeah, I just ate a whole thing of fries because fat girl. I just had a doctor not take me seriously when I went in for a cold and they told me to lose weight because fat girl. And so it kind of incorporates what it means on all levels to be a fat person in society, from making kind of like a jovial fun about the cliches. I love fries with cheese, and I always joke, of course I love fries with cheese, I'm fat, right? Like you're leaning into those stereotypes and joking about them and embracing them. And it also is a reality of the way in which we're treated differently in people in larger bodies, and the way in which we're often, feel like we're not worthy of various different things, or treated like we're not worthy of various different things because we're in larger bodies. And as the book, as spoiler alert, it's a romance, so there's a happily ever after. And at the end of the book, she has this kind of realization that all of the things, being queer, neurodiverse, and fat, all these things that she thought made her unable to find success, unable to find love, unable to find happiness, are actually the things that defined her ability to do that. They made her have community. They made her be more interesting and unique. And they were the reasons she wasn't doing this in spite of that. They were part of her and part of her excitement. And she made it there because fat girl. So it encompasses all this different variety of things and becomes a saying that can move you through multiple times in your life. And it comes from the body positive and fat community. So I appreciated reclaiming it as a title as well.
This is going to sound like an odd question, but is because fat girl brat then?
You know what? That's so funny. I am old and I don't know if I am too old for brat, but it is so brat. It is so brat.
I think it's brat.
Right? It's that same kind of idea of like, why am I so fabulous? Because I'm queer. Why am I paid less? Because I'm queer. Right? Like it's that same kind of thing that I find it embodies. Like it could easily be called because queer girl as well. Right? It's like, yeah, it's brat. It's totally brat.
So let's just jump right in. What is the story that you're telling within the pages of Because Fat Girl?
Yeah. So there is the story I'm telling at its core is a story about a woman who had some success in her career and was doing really great until cancer came and chopped off a limb of her family tree. Her brother dies of cancer. And that is my story. I felt like my career, my life was doing so great. And then my brother died of cancer. And she's trying to find herself again. What does it mean to be someone who's grieving? What does it mean to be someone who's, overcoming the heartache and trying to come out of that depth of despair to find out that her career died with her brother? And so she's trying to figure out who she is and what she wants to do with her life, who she wants to love, what she is, what she's doing. She gave up everything and moved in with her sister in the suburbs. And now she's trying to figure out what's next. And that's where we start the movie. We start the book she is working at a high-end department store surrounded by celebrities. And that's the closest thing she has now to making movies. And she's always dreamt of making movies. And she's still working towards that dream. She just got detoured by grief. And I feel like that's something so many readers early readers are now responding to me, and so many readers are responding to this idea that they had this path in life and then something came and kind of shoved them off that path, and it's really hard to get back onto that path. So this is a story about getting back onto that path in life. And during that process, she, as a queer person who has only ever dated women in her life, and non-binary folk, suddenly finds herself attracted to a cis man and unsure what to do with that. And I think that that's such an important story that we don't hear enough about. I think you get a lot of coming out stories where people realize that they're more like gay than they realized, but you don't have a lot of stories about people realizing that their sexuality might be more fluid in the other way. And as somebody who dates a lot of, has dated trans men and has dated people of all different kinds of genders, I thought it was important to kind of explore that personally. So it follows her as she falls in love with this character, and it's the complete opposite of who she ever thought she'd fall in love with. And her life just turns into something different, and what it looks like to see her fighting her path instead of embracing the path, and like learning to love herself in that process of it. And then there's a group of diverse friends, all of them from various different backgrounds, that are coming together to make a movie. So I always say that the true love story is between Diana and her friends, and they're falling in love with this process. They're unwilling to go forward without everybody coming along, and they're unwilling to do this with their values compromised. And it shows them working hard to make it in Hollywood.
Okay, so quote, I've grown up belittled for my weight, bullied for being gay, and generally miserable in my body, unquote. That's from your novel, Because Fat Girl. They often say, write what you know. Write what you know. Is this novel in part autobiographical? Is this novel maybe partly a memoir?
Yeah, I joke that it's this is a memoir where I wrote the ending that I wanted, which was I get to make a movie together with a bunch of famous, cool people and all my friends. It has somebody whose brother died, and she lives with her sister and is raising the kids with her sister. It is about somebody who I grew up in a small rural farming town on the Mexican border, and it was not always an easy place to be queer. And it was the kind of place where they accepted me, but we're not okay with my life choices, right? We love the sinner, but hate the sin. And I was, very lucky that my dad didn't really know what to do with me as a kid, with a gay kid. I was out at 12, and my mom would drive me to San Diego and take me to the gay parts of town. Not overtly, but get me a gay hairdresser to show she was cool with it. And so I was very lucky that I had this insular situation in which I didn't have to worry about physical harm, but I definitely had some pretty intense bullying. I lost friends. I had a lot of, Bible beating people that would, we tried to start a P flag in our county, and they, the whole county came against it, but we would have church groups proselytizing about how bad we were at school lunch, right? I grew up in California, but it might as well have been the Bible beating South. And so it absolutely talks about, I remember there was a kid who was bullying me at school, and the answer was well, maybe you shouldn't be fat. Maybe you should lose weight. Maybe that's a good incentive for you to lose weight, is this kid who's treating you like shit every single day and making it really hard for you to go to school. And I think that things have come a long way. I know kids that are in my hometown now they don't put up with bullying, and they my nibblings are out and queer, and it's amazing and beautiful to see. And I think that it's also really hard a lot of places. And so I wanted to have a book. There is a really big part of this book where a young queer kid has somebody stand up for them. And I like to write the stories in the world that I want existing. It isn't separate from homophobia or transphobia or the oppression that we experience, but it shows people standing up for other people and not putting up with that. And it shows people accepting other people in the way that it could be. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And it's something I needed as a kid. And I think also there's a little homage, the cover has the trans flag on it. As a genderqueer person with lots of trans friends, I wanted a little bit of a trans homage also. And there are trans characters that like have love and have lives in the book. And I just think it's so important to show the whole LGBTQIA plus spectrum finding love and joy. And I hope that this book helps people like me who, you know, I didn't get a queer book when I was a kid, but I remember going into a bookstore and coming across a queer book as a teen and just feeling so seen, so heard. Like I always say it was Fleming Iguanas by Erica Oliveras, I think is her last name. And I remember being like, I don't know why I'm so attracted to these leather wearing women that ride motorcycles, but something about them is really exciting to me. And,
would that be dykes on bikes?
Oh my God, yes. And it was the beginning of I'm just putting this out there. I still haven't gotten to ride behind somebody on a Dykes on Bikes in the part of the parade. So if anybody out there hears that, I want to ride on the back of a Dykes on Bikes. Lifelong dream still not accomplished. But yeah, like books were the beginning of my understanding of not just my queerness, but my active involvement in the BDSM community, of my non-binariness, like of the difference between femme and woman. So I'm hoping that my book can not only showcase that for queer people, but also help allies see themselves in the situations in which people need an ally and the people around them step up and be an ally.
Is it true that it took you 20 years to write this book?
So it took me 20 years to get a book deal. I started my first novel at...
That's what, Body Love?
So my first novel was actually about a group of lesbian assassins fronting as a book club. And my first novel, I started 20 years ago this October. So my book will come out 20 years, almost to the week that I started my first novel. And in the past, 13 years, I have been actively trying to get a book deal. And I have faced so much rejection. And a lot of it is like thinly veiled homophobia and then some thinly veiled fat phobia. And I think I always have to give a shout out to the Casey McQuiston success of Red, White, and Royal Blue, and Alison Cochran, and some of the people, Becky Albertalli, some of these people who have come before me, Garth Greenwell. There are so many people who've come before me and kind of opened doors that were slammed in my face before. And I have actively tried to get a book deal for this book for 7 years, and for books in general for 12. And I've gone all the way to the publishers, and they loved the book, and then the marketing and sales teams wouldn't buy it. And so for anybody out there who's still struggling, know that one, it's gotten a little bit better in the industry. So keep putting yourself out there. And two, there are people within the industry that are working so hard to make it more diverse, and know that you have allies in it, and keep putting yourself out there. It took me 20 years and now watch me grow, right? Watch me take off.
There's also an audiobook component. Were you involved in that aspect at all?
Oh, yeah. I read the audiobook, which was
okay.
I always wanted to do in my whole life. I remember I got into audiobooks as a kid, and I'm a huge audiobook junkie. I listen to probably 50 audiobooks a year. I love Libro.fm. They are a really fabulous company that allows you to get an audiobook and support your local bookstore of choosing. And so I devour audiobooks. And so I was pretty adamant that I wanted to read the book. And I had some training. I've done some radio stuff. I had some training. I was like, I can do this. And then I get into the office, I get into the studio, and I'm like, oh my God, this is really hard. This is so hard. What was I thinking? I talk all the time. I can talk all day. This is different. This is hard. And it took a lot of training of my voice, and it took a lot of patience, but we ended up doing a great job. I had an amazing sound engineer who's also an audiobook engineer herself, and I recorded the audiobook, and I'm very, very excited about that. And I feel like I don't need to record all of my audiobooks, but this particular one, since it's so memoiristic and it's so based on my own voice and my own life, I felt like it was appropriate for me to read it. And I had fun. I apologize ahead of time for my accents. I am not an accent person. I should have practiced a little bit more, but the rest of it, I think, early listens, it sounds really, really great. I'm so glad that I got to read it.
And on that note, we'll return after this Rainbow Country update.
Hi, I'm Justin Ling, author of Missing from the Village. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
This is gay hip-hop artist, the Mangfather Bob Katz. An artist friend of mine recommended that I check out Mark Tara's Rainbow Country years ago, and I've been enjoying it ever since. Mark's excellent interviews highlight all aspects of the LGBTQ community, and he's not afraid to ask the difficult questions that other hosts avoid. And I love the music that Mark plays on Rainbow Country each week, especially when he plays my music. But seriously, Mark Tara has been such a supporter of my music and has turned me on to so many great LGBTQ artists that I'd never heard of before. I'm so grateful to Mark Tara's Rainbow Country.
In June 2014, I was fortunate enough to cover North America's first World Pride that took place in Toronto. The interviews and footage that I captured was recently turned into a documentary that's officially out now. A Different Kind of Love is the name of the documentary and can be found on Out TV and Out TV Proud, which is available on Apple TV and other streaming platforms. So, as you may know, in June, I won the Out Loud Best in LGBT Radio Programming from the NCRA, the National Community Radio Association. I received that honor for my episode on Operation Soap, the bathhouse raids that happened on February 5th, 1981. So if you think what I'm doing here on Rainbow Country, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond, available on broadcast radio, streaming, as well as an edited podcast. If you think what I'm doing here is worthwhile, I hope you'll consider making a donation to this very outlet you are tuned to. If you're listening to the edited podcast, I hope you'll consider making a donation to an outlet that does carry Rainbow Country. How can you find out? Well, it's simple. Simply head over to marktara.com where everything is connected and hit the donation banner. That's where you'll find all the outlets that carry Rainbow Country. A little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. Have your voice, have your support be heard.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. And of course our artists and the things that we do globally and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keegan Hurst, former professional rugby player, coach, raving homosexual, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So, Lauren Marie Fleming, you're a writer, you're a writing coach. You help people discover their authentic story and tell that story to the world. Who helped you discover your story, to tell your story? Was there an individual or people or what?
Yeah, I think not to be too big of a massive gay cliche, but I'm going to shout out my English teacher and my theater teachers. Right? I think that I found my voice through Dr. Kurgan, Mr. Kurgan, my English teacher, who was the kind of man who lived in a small rural town during the school year and then New York City and went to plays during any vacation he had. And was a very effeminate man. I have no idea if he was gay or not, but he definitely had the "I'm here to support you" little gay kid vibes, and definitely was a safe haven for me in high school. I had some other really great teachers too, but he was the one that challenged me to think creatively and think beyond. He introduced me to films, he introduced me to theater, he introduced me to so much creativity and culture, and that helped me to find my own voice by hearing other people's voices. He introduced me to voices I probably never would have heard if not for his influence in my life. And then I had Mrs. McGraw was my drama teacher freshman year, who I wasn't supposed to be in drama, weren't as a freshman allowed to, but I was already struggling so much that she made a space for a freshman kid to join when we weren't supposed to in the school. Like, she advocated to the school to let me in drama, and that saved me. And then Rosemary Woods and Patricia Sirocco were two people who started a community theater when I was a teen and pulled me in, especially Rosemary Woods pulled me in and reminded me that there were safe places out in the world for gay kids and that I would be okay and that I could pursue the arts and I could use my voice. And they gave me positions like I was a choreographer. I didn't know how to choreograph. They let me try whatever I wanted and find my voice that way. They let me help direct. They let me help do things. And I think that I grew up in a very small, impoverished little town. And yet there were these people who were doing beautiful things and were highly resourced by passionate people at the time I was there. And I'm forever grateful for those people in high school that kept me alive, really. I was absolutely the kid that was like self-harming and struggling so hard to be a little queer kid in this super religious town. And they were the ones that helped me know that there was a world beyond me and that there was power in telling my story and there was power in other people's stories.
Wow, well said, well said. You just mentioned the word queer for yourself and being part of the LGBT community and being a queer individual for yourself. When did that start happening for you? When did this journey start for you? When did you start recognizing, the gay aspect of yourself? When did that start crystallizing in your mind for you growing up?
Yeah, I always, whenever people ask that, I always think of this photo of me in this like rainbow like full head to toe rainbow gear. That's like this jumpsuit with my chest open and I'm like posing. And it is the gayest photo I've ever taken. And I've taken some really gay photos in my life, y'all. I'm a gay cliche all the time. And I just think about how there was always something about me that I knew was different. Just always something about me that I knew was different. And innately, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that there are so many people who don't understand that part of themselves until later in life. And I don't think there's anything better or worse of when you come out, but I understood it very early on. I remember I was in 6th grade and I was with a group of guy friends and they were explaining things they were interested in trying with girls. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that too. And they're like, most girls don't. I was like, wait, like other girls don't want to do that to other girls? Okay, then I'm gay. If that's what you call me. And so, I called myself bi for years and I dated some guys. It just wasn't really necessarily what I was interested in. And then I took off to San Francisco and was, in the heart of San Francisco in the gayest of gay times. And when there was still like a huge queer women population on Valencia Street. And I was so lucky to be, I always thought the heyday of San Francisco was over when I was living it. But then I look back and I'm like, oh my God, we had the Lexington, we had Fairy Butch, we had these amazing stories of like, we were the beginning of queer porn happening in that time. Like it was an amazing Renaissance time to be a queer woman in San Francisco. And I'm so lucky that that coming out happened within such an amazing community that was body positive, that was kind, was open, that was kinky and queer and fun. And I think that's when my like real understanding of the variety of the full spectrum of the rainbow came from, and I could pick and choose, and I didn't have to be one particular type of gay. So I think I realized early on just how gay I was, but I don't think I really understood my gender identity and my kink identity and my like role in the world until I got to play around in those different roles in San Francisco.
Wow. Sounds like a real awakening. Like really coming into, I mean, it sounds like you've always known who you are, but then, you know, discovering that community.
I think there's something about peeling off the layers of ourselves. I think I always knew who I wanted to be and where I was headed. And I think every ideation of me was the me in that moment, right? Like it wasn't any less me any of those times, but I do feel like there were moments when I was a part of community that allowed me to explore myself, and that was beautiful. And one of the things I'm trying to do with this book, because Fat Girl, is show that queerness is less about a box, a binary choosing. If I'm like, I've had so many people be like, well, are you a lesbian? Are you bi? Are you what? And I'm like, I'm queer because every aspect of my life is different than the heterosexual normative. And so I feel like I've been so lucky in my life. And it's interesting because it could be seen as unlucky because I was like growing up not getting to experience any of this and feeling like all of everything my friends got, the like boyfriends and the girlfriends and the time, and that I didn't get any of that in high school. So then I get to college and I'm like, I'm having it all, folks. Take me to every single thing. If it has a rainbow on it, it does. And I think there's a beautiful, I hesitate. I think this book shows my own personal hesitation to make us stick to labels too hard. And this is what I love about the like gender queerness and the non-binariness and the exploration that's happening, especially in this younger generation, is we're less inclined to make ourselves pick a box and stay in it forever. And we're allowed to understand that our lives are fluid, our sexuality is fluid, our identities are often fluid, and they change, and they change by the day some days for me, whether I'm feeling more butch or femme. And I think that I'm so lucky that I've been able to have the courage, because it wasn't handed to me by any means. Like it was, in fact, the opposite was told to me. But I've been so lucky to be a part of communities that have allowed me to explore and given me safe spaces to explore.
I want to ask you, I want to get your opinion on something, which is something that I'm not necessarily struggling with, but trying to understand and get a wide perspective, a wide range of opinions on, and it's being gender non-binary. For me, I'm gay, I'm androgynous, I am androgyny, I am a mix of both male and female energies. That's who I am. When I hear someone say that they are gender non-binary and they say that they are neither male nor female, that's telling me who you are not. It's not necessarily telling me who you are or how you identify. It's telling me what you are not, how you don't want to identify. So for yourself, how do you see this? Because it's such a new term, and it's used and adopted so many times that I'm starting to ask this question, like, what does it mean to be gender non-binary? And for yourself, how do you see this? If someone says that they're neither A nor B, they're neither male nor female, then how do you identify yourself? Do you see what I'm asking? And what's your take?
My take is actually, I sometimes default to the term non-binary because it's so much more understandable to straight people. But within my communities, I call myself genderqueer because I think that in the same way that my queerness is, I identified as bisexual for a really long time because I had slept with men in high school and was now sleeping with women, and I thought, okay, I'm bi. And then I realized I didn't really want to be with men again. So I called myself a lesbian. And then I started dating non-binary people. And so then I was queer. And then it was da-da-da-da. And I feel like similarly to non-binary, it says in the name binary, right? I think you bring up such a great point. It isn't saying what it is, it's saying what it isn't. And it's also then reinforcing that there could be a binary. So I personally like gender queer, and I like queer in all aspects. I think queer for me, again, means that I'm different than the heteronorm. I'm kinky. I'm an active part of the BDSM community. My gender is not, cis, and and even that, right? Like my gender is not cis. So for me, I don't.
And gender is a construct. It's something that humans have created. I mean, you don't see animals like, dressed up as, feminine or masculine. Although there are peacocks, and
I was just thinking about peacocks.
The men are more colorful.
Right? It's always so funny to me because I think the example I always think about is like, oh, gender is in nature, but men tend to be the ones performing and preening, so maybe men should be more natural and start wearing more fabulous dresses and outfits and colors and dress like drag queens. Like drag queens are the closest to peacocks we're gonna have. So right? Like I think for me it's like, so I ask this question a lot: is gender a construct? And if gender is a construct, is it bad that we're constructing our gender? Like today, I am wearing makeup and my hair is curly and I have earrings on and lipstick and a cute little femme outfit. Am I a different person on the days I dress more masculine? I don't perform gender. And if gender is a construct and a performance, then what do I say to my trans friends that are like leaning into the performance of the gender that identifies most with them? And so I don't really know the answer to any of this, but I think that's what's so cool about it, is we are in a world where we get to, for lack of a better way, and I'm sorry if I can't cuss, but like fuck around and find out. I think for me, I love the fluidity of gender. And so for me, gender fluid, gender queer works better. And I don't actually like non-binary, but I'm never going to tell somebody you don't get to call yourself that, right? Like just because I might not like that term. And I think that it's so hard because we are fighting so hard for our right to exist right now. And so we want these languages and terms that we can tell straight people so they can be our better allies by using the right language. And then we are recreating our own languages. And we're just so under attack right now. We can get almost defensive over terminology. And I think that can be really important if someone's misgendering somebody or doing it harmfully. But for me within our community, I think the exploration is the reason I'm queer. If I can't keep exploring, if I can't change tomorrow what I want to be and who I want to do, and then did I really win, right? Like, am I living the life I want to live? So I don't know if I answered your question, but for me, queerness is inherently playful and inherently creative and inherently explorative and inherently allowing ourselves to embrace differences. And I love that about us. Like, I love that. That's my favorite part of it. And so, yeah, I like the fluidity of it. And I'm not a personal fan of the term non-binary because I think it's just like talks about binaries, but also I will be the first to say, hell yes, be a non-binary person, right? Like, I think that my take on labels is give us 200,000 labels if we have to. I'm a writer. Just give me the words that you want me to use and I can change it tomorrow if you want to change your words. And that's kind of my take on sexuality too.
You are the founder of School for Writers. What is School for Writers?
School for Writers is my company that I started in 2020. Right before the pandemic, I quit my job. And at first I was like, oh God, what did I do? And then second, I was like, well, everyone's stuck inside. This is a great time to start a school to help people write their books. And I saw a diversity in publishing study that made me furious. The lack of diversity in publishing made me furious. I would go into bookstores and I would have read all the lesbian books they had there. And I was so angry about it all. And I would yell and talk to my friends. I was like, well, screw it. I'm going to help people write their books. I'm going to change this. The number one way you can change the diversity of publishing is helping more diverse voices tell their stories. And so I created this company, and we've done really well. And we help a lot of people get their stories out and feel more able to tell their stories. Our flagship program is called Write Your Friggin' Book Already, but we also have podcasts and freebies and courses and so much support. And then for established creatives, we have some programs to help them build resilience, overcome rejection, and get themselves out there and make money, even, because we live in capitalism. We can't keep being artists if we aren't able to sell our art. You can be a hobbyist artist for sure, but so many of my friends weren't able to pay their bills. So we talk about marketing, we talk about money, we talk about everything. And the goal is to help diverse storytellers thrive so we can have more books on the shelves and eventually movies out in the world and media. And so we can have our stories out there. So I started the company with the goal in mind of supporting people in telling their stories, because I think that the world needs our stories now more than ever.
So you've been featured on Good Morning America, on Glamour, on Cosmo. You've written, over 2 books? Here's my last...
I've published 2 books. I've written 13. That Girl's my 13th book, which I find that interesting that my 13th book is the one that got published.
So here's my last question for you. What do you hope your audiences come away with after they've experienced, they've read one of your books, they've heard the audiobook, maybe they've been part of your writing coaching? What do you hope your audiences come away with after they've experienced Lauren Marie Fleming?
So in my living room, I have a whiteboard that has my legacy written on it. So I'm reminded of it consistently. And it has 3 parts to it. The first part is me telling my stories. I want to be out there actively telling empathetic and empowering stories. The second part is you, the people that I interact with, the people that I talk to. I want to help you be out there telling more empathetic and empowering stories. And the third part is us, the community. I want my work to have a ripple effect that helps people that will never even meet me or read one of my books to tell more empathetic and empowering stories. And so I want people to read this book. And you will see at the end of Because Fat Girl, even in the acknowledgments, I say this, like the thing that I want the most from this book is I want people to go out and tell their own stories. I want them to grab their phone and make a movie with friends. I want them to produce a play in their community. I want them to paint or art or do art or art or do art or write their book or whatever helps get their stories out there, because creativity is how we creativity is how we define ourselves as humans. It defines our humanity. We literally, the animals that are closest to us are those that create, that make things. And so if I can encourage people to make more space in their life for creativity, make more space in their life for empathy, and feel more empowered, I've done my job here on the planet while I'm here. And I hope that people read my book, Body Love, 10 Steps to Profoundly Loving Your Body, and love their body more, feel more empathetic and empowered in their body. And I hope people read Because Fat Girl and feel more empathetic towards others, empathetic towards themselves, and empowered and empowering others.
Wow, well said, well said. Lauren Marie Fleming, well said, well done, well written. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor. This is a great conversation. Thank you.
Once the table was set, Alice and I lay out together in the grass, waiting for their mom to let us back in the kitchen to get some food. Their little body curled up on the crook of my arm, and we both sighed, soaking up that famous Southern California sun. It was a gorgeous day, even by LA standards. The sky was clear, but there were still wisps of clouds here and there for aesthetic effect. It felt like the studio set the perfect backdrop for a Sunday outdoor brunch. It was images of days like this that had convinced me to move to LA in the first place a decade ago, when I was a starry-eyed 18-year-old leaving my small farming town on the Mexican border to enter film school in the shiny big city. While my friends had dreamed of marrying the latest TV heartthrob, I dreamed of working with Nora Ephron and directing Meryl Streep. I longed to be someone who inspired others, like I'd been inspired by Holland Taylor, Gabrielle Sidibe, America Ferrera, Kate McKinnon, Lena Waithe, Janet Mock, Jane Litch, Michaela J. Rodriguez, and Melissa McCarthy, to name just a few. women, and non-binary folks who taught me that Hollywood wasn't just for thin, straight white men. I'd gotten close, too. A year out of film school, my senior thesis film, Lalo's Lament, won a handful of awards, getting me an agent and helping me sell a full-length script, all by the age of 23. As a congratulations gift, Janelle, my best friend, had somehow scored bleacher seats outside the Oscars, and we clenched each other's hands with excitement, knowing someday soon that would be us walking the red carpet, reporters asking us who we were wearing, to which we'd indignantly reply, ask me about more than my clothes. Ask me about my work, my ambitions, my causes, like you do the men. That was years ago, back before I knew that studio execs would buy scripts with no real intention of making them, just to keep them off the market if they were about to release something similar. I wrote more scripts and put together a crew for another short. I pushed and hustled, putting in the work and refusing to accept rejection. Then my brother was diagnosed with cancer, and everything stopped. Grief shattered me into a million pieces, and it took half a decade to gather back the bits that had been lost. Some, like my directing career, I worried I'd never see again. When Cecily got divorced, I gave up my apartment in Silver Lake, moved in with her in the suburbs, and spent the hours I used to attend industry events helping with the kids, my career as a writer and director a distant memory. I could barely watch movies these days. I hated wondering what my life would be like if cancer hadn't come in and chopped off a limb of my family tree.
The novel and audiobook, Because Fat Girl, is available wherever you get your favorite books. For more on this author, her writing school, School for Writers, and more, simply visit laurenmariefleming.com.
Bill 7, to ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
Phone rings. I got a message from the mayor. He's going to call me back the next day. I get the call, and he said, if you'd accept, we'd like to honor you with the key to the city. There was an event later that year in May. Just a key, right? Like, key to what? A decent job, a good singing career. It's really a metaphor, but it's history. So a reporter wants to talk to me and says, so it's a key, right? Like, what's the big deal? I said, well, not everybody gets the key. So I looked it up, and I guess it is kind of a big deal.
The date, May 17th, 2018, when trans activist Susan Gapka made history by becoming the first trans woman to be presented with the key to the city of Toronto. By the way, past recipients include Rush and the Raptors. And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.com, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Gord Depp at The Spoons. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara